Welcome to today's deep dive. So picture this. It's the year 2026, and the leader of a 2,000-year-old institution has to sit down, look his senior staff right in the eye, and explicitly tell them to stop using artificial intelligence to write their public speeches.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Right. And he also had to ask them to stop chasing viral fame on TikTok. I mean, it's a fascinating scenario. Today, we are looking at a remarkably candid, almost bracing address given by Pope Leo IV to the clergy of Rome on February 19th, 2026.
It really is a genuinely fascinating piece of primary source material.
Yeah.
You rarely see this level of direct, unvarnished institutional critique coming from the very top.
Yeah, exactly.
Pope Leo IV wasn't offering, abstract theological musings here. He was diagnosing a severe psychological and structural crisis within the priesthood. He basically lays out this entire narrative of how a modern priest spirals from cultural confusion into just complete burnout.
Complete burnout. Yeah. And before we really get into the weeds of that spiral, I want to mention where we source today's material for you. We're drawing this from epistles.online.
Mm-hmm.
If you, as a listener, are looking for a platform that takes and promotes a deeply balanced take on Catholicism, epistles.online is exactly where you want to go. They carefully avoid modernism, which is, basically the temptation to warp theology just to fit passing modern fads.
Right.
And on the flip side, they avoid radical, unhealthy traditionalism that tries to, trap the faith in a museum. It's just a very grounded perspective.
Which is really the perfect lens for this specific papal address. Because what Pope Leo outlines is essentially a tragedy in 4 acts.
Yeah.
He identifies a series of profound errors that are currently tearing the priesthood apart. But he doesn't frame these as punishments. He frames them as a pastoral lifeline to men who are drowning.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand why they're drowning, we have to look at the water they're swimming in, right?
Exactly.
Pope Leo doesn't start by attacking individual bad behavior. He starts by pointing out a massive cultural delusion. He says the fundamental error many priests are making today is, operating on the assumption that the world hasn't changed around them.
What's fascinating here is the mechanics of that delusion. I mean, for centuries, the church operated in an environment where the surrounding culture did the heavy lifting of transmitting the faith.
Mm-hmm. Your family, your school.
Right, your neighborhood, the media, they all generally reinforced a Christian worldview because evangelization was almost automatic. A priest could focus heavily on administering the sacraments, the rituals. He just had to maintain the machinery,
But the culture isn't a conveyor belt bringing people into the church anymore.
No, not at all.
The culture has completely eroded in that regard. So if a priest just keeps doing the rituals without actively proclaiming the gospel to people who have never even heard it, the sacraments start to feel like empty routine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a retail store leaving its doors open and expecting a rush of customers just because it was a busy location in the 1950s, without doing any modern marketing. You can't just unlock the doors and assume people will walk in.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. Operating a 1950s pastoral model in the 2020s guarantees bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Pope Leo explicitly calls out this reliance on an outdated, classic pastoral model. He insists that priests have to experiment. They need to find entirely new forms of Christian initiation that exist outside the traditional Catholic school rhythms and standard parish routines.
Because the environment will no longer pass on the faith.
Precisely.
So when a priest looks out at empty pews and finally realizes the culture isn't doing the work anymore, panic sets in. And the natural human reaction to that panic is to just work harder.
Right, to try and do everything yourself.
Exactly. But Pope Leo points out that this leads to a dangerous kind of do-it-yourself isolation.
He uses a very specific phrase for this: self-referential pastoralism. Yeah. It essentially means a ministry that only looks inward. A priest acting entirely alone, completely isolated in his own parish, or worse, acting competitively with the neighboring parish down the street.
Oh, wow.
It produces massive overwork, duplicated efforts, and just a complete breakdown of community among the priests themselves.
And when you are locked in that bubble of isolation, just drowning in the crushing weight of administrative headaches, funerals, and building maintenance, you completely miss the demographic that needs you the most. The Pope highlights a critical failure here, neglecting proximity to young people. He notes that youth today largely live without any reference to God or the church.
And you cannot reach a demographic that has no reference point for your institution if you never, leave the building.
Right.
The Pope is telling them they need to go out into the streets, show up at sports events, be present in art and culture spaces.
Wait, let me push back on this a little bit, because that sounds like a beautiful sentiment, but functionally, how is that even possible? We just established these guys are overwhelmed and exhausted by an outdated model.
Yeah, they're drowning.
Right. If a priest is barely keeping his head above water with hospital visits and parish council meetings, how on earth is he supposed to find the time to casually hang out at a local soccer game to meet young people?
Well, that is the exact friction Pope Leo is addressing.
Yeah.
It is impossible if they remain isolated. That is why the Pope connects the problem of isolation with the solution for reaching the youth.
Okay.
He tells them they must overcome this self-referentiality by pooling charisms and collaborating between neighboring parishes.
Okay, I need you to pause and define charisms for us, because that sounds like some heavy theological jargon.
Oh, fair point. Yeah. In this context, a charism is essentially a unique spiritual gift or a specific talent given to an individual.
Like a specialty.
Exactly. One priest might have an incredible charism for counseling the grieving. Another might be a brilliant administrator. Another might have a natural magnetic ability to connect with teenagers.
Ah, I see where this is going. If you have 3 isolated parishes, you have 3 exhausted priests trying to be all things to all people and failing.
Precisely. The Pope is saying, pool your resources, pool your charisms. If 3 neighboring parishes coordinate, they don't all need to run 3 separate, poorly attended youth programs on the exact same night.
That makes so much sense.
Right. One priest can handle the administrative load for the cluster, freeing up the priest with a charism for youth ministry to actually go out to the sports fields and the art spaces.
Wow.
The goal isn't to invent more busy work inside the church. The goal is human friendship and sustained accompaniment. You can only listen to young people and share their lives if you have the bandwidth to be present.
And speaking of pooling resources, sharing wisdom, and finding the right guidance to navigate these kinds of modern challenges, I want to quickly point you, our listeners, to something. We mentioned epistles earlier. Well, they don't just provide great articles. They strongly support virtuous, tradition-leaning Catholic authors. And for your convenience, book links are included directly on their website, epistles.online.
It's a great resource.
It really is. So if you wish to purchase books to deepen your own understanding and support this mission, you should absolutely use the links provided there. It's a fantastic way to build a trustworthy library.
And having grounded reading material is vital right now. Because when you lack that grounding, when you are an isolated, overworked priest experiencing the sheer exhaustion we just described, you become incredibly vulnerable to modern shortcuts.
Which brings us to the third act of this tragedy, the threat of artificiality. When you are running on empty, you start seeking fast validation or, quick fixes.
Yeah. The Pope identifies a severe warning sign here. He says a weak personal prayer life leads directly to the temptation of outsourcing homilies to artificial intelligence.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because AI is infiltrating every profession right now.
Oh yeah, everywhere.
Lawyers are using it for briefs, coders are using it for software. But a homily, to me, using a chatbot to write a homily is like using ChatGPT to write your wedding vows.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, sure, the AI might use perfect grammar, it might structure the theological points flawlessly, but it completely defeats the purpose. A wedding vow means nothing if it doesn't come from your own heart and your own lived experience.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Pope Leo's warning is incredibly stark. He states plainly, AI will never be able to share the faith.
Wow.
Think about the mechanics of preaching. A true homily is an act of sharing a lived faith. It's supposed to spring from the priest's personal friendship with Jesus, his own struggles, his own suffering, and his understanding of the human condition.
Because an algorithm has never grieved a lost loved one.
Exactly.
It has never felt the sting of its own hypocrisy. It hasn't suffered.
It hasn't. So if a priest has a superficial prayer life, and he's just reading an essay generated by a machine, he is offering a synthetic product. He is undermining his own authentic witness.
Yeah.
It is a shortcut that cuts the soul right out of the ministry.
But the artificiality doesn't stop with AI. The Pope points to another modern trap that isolated, burnt-out people fall into, which is seeking popularity on social media. He specifically calls out platforms like TikTok.
Chasing followers, counting likes, trying to build a personal brand. Pope Leo identifies this as a form of vanity and, crucially, a deception.
Let's break down the why of that deception, because a priest could easily justify it, right?
Oh, for sure.
They see 1 million views on a video and think, look at all these souls I'm reaching. I'm evangelizing the digital continent.
That is the exact trap.
Yeah.
But we have to look at how social media algorithms actually function. The algorithm of platforms like TikTok is mathematically designed to reward controversy, high emotion, rapid-fire trends, and, personality cults. It is an entertainment machine. Pope Leo warns that if we are not transmitting the message of Jesus Christ, we're entirely mistaken.
So the medium actually forces the priest to make the content about his own quirky personality or his hot takes rather than the gospel.
The medium corrupts the message. If a priest is chasing the latest viral trend to get a dopamine hit from the likes, the metrics are meaningless.
Right.
Authentic digital presence must prioritize prayerful witness and humility. When the platform becomes a mirror for self-promotion instead of a window to the divine, the priest has lost his way.
So paint this picture for me. We have a priest who is overwhelmed by an outdated pastoral model. He isolates himself to work harder.
Yeah.
He's too exhausted to pray, so he uses AI to write his sermons. And he feels so disconnected from his empty parish that he seeks his emotional validation from strangers on TikTok.
It is a recipe for a massive internal crisis. And the tragedy is that this crisis doesn't stay internal. It bleeds out into the community and destroys the relationships between the priests themselves.
Right.
This is the final stage of the spiral Pope Leo addresses, the internal cancer.
He calls it invidia clericalis, clerical envy, gossip, and jealousy.
We tend to idealize the clergy as this unified, holy brotherhood, but they are human men under immense pressure.
Of course.
The Pope points out that this envy and gossip actively fracture fraternity. It creates factions. It turns confreres brothers in ministry into bitter rivals. Instead of building the bonds necessary to survive the cultural shift we talked about earlier, this toxic behavior destroys the very support system meant to sustain them.
So what is his proposed solution to this deep-seated resentment?
It's remarkably simple, actually. He urges regular fraternal gatherings.
Okay.
Shared prayer, shared study, and most importantly, shared meals. He is telling them to stop hiding in their offices and actually take the initiative to build friendships. They need trusted groups for mutual support, where they can be vulnerable about their struggles instead of tearing each other down.
I mean, shared meals and building friendships sound great in theory, but practically speaking, how do you find the time or energy for a fraternal dinner when you are drowning in logistics?
That's tough.
Trying to organize parish staff, volunteers, altar servers. The administrative load alone breeds that exact resentment. Someone always feels like they're carrying more of the weight. Team burnout, scheduling stress, and workplace toxicity. These are universal problems, not just clerical ones.
Oh, absolutely.
Any group of people trying to coordinate a massive workload runs into friction.
Logistics can absolutely make or break team morale. If the schedule is chaotic, resentment builds instantly.
Which is why, frankly, one of the main problems in many secular workplaces is simply plotting schedules for a group of employees. It is often incredibly stressful, it's time-consuming, and it can seriously affect team engagement.
Definitely.
A simple solution to this is staff-scheduling.com. That's staff-scheduling.com. They provide a Microsoft Excel-based automated staff scheduling template.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, it is built with highly sophisticated formatting and carefully designed formulas. When you enter the employees' names and their shifts, the template automatically shows the number of staff working at a given time of the day, as well as the total hours and days already assigned to each employee. It is a massive real-time saver.
Right.
If you want to get the administrative headaches out of the way so you can actually focus on your team, you need to check it out at www.staff-scheduling.com.
And, removing those logistical burdens is exactly what frees up the bandwidth for the kind of authentic human connection Pope Leo is begging his priests to return to.
So what does this all mean? We've traced this entire spiral laid out by Pope Leo XIV. The danger of relying on a bygone culture, the trap of isolation, the empty promises of artificial intelligence and social media vanity, and the poison of internal jealousy.
Yeah.
When you strip all the theology away, the ultimate lesson here is a massive, urgent call to authenticity.
It's about choosing real, messy human connection. It's about deep spiritual roots over hollow routines. You cannot let an algorithm speak for your soul, and you cannot measure your human worth by a digital follower account.
And what I appreciate about this address is that the Pope didn't just point out the disease, he provided a prescription. At the very end of his speech, he specifically endorsed 3 works to help guide his priests back to that authenticity.
The reading list he provided is brilliant because it tackles the crisis from 3 different angles.
Okay, what are they?
First, he recommended the works of St. Augustine, which dives deeply into the human heart's restless search for God perfect, for countering that superficial digital vanity.
Oh, wow.
Second, a classic text by Brother Lawrence called The Practice of the Presence of God. That book is entirely about finding profound spiritual depth in the most ordinary, mundane daily tasks, like washing dishes or sweeping floors.
Like the antidote to pastoral burnout.
Exactly. And the third one is fascinating. Robert Hugh Benthing's novel, Lord of the World.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yes. It's a dystopian novel written in the early 1900s. It offers a prophetic look at a future world that embraces secular humanism, promises utopian peace through technology, and completely marginalizes the faith.
Wow.
It perfectly encapsulates the cultural reality check Pope Leo was talking about in his very first points. It forces the reader to confront what happens when society no longer does the heavy lifting for you.
That is a powerful trio. Theology, practical daily spirituality, and a cultural wake-up call. And for those of you listening, I want to remind you that this deep dive, again, is taken from epistles.online, Guarding the Deposit of Faith. We highly encourage you to access the website, explore their insights on these exact issues, and subscribe to it.
It takes immense clarity to navigate this modern landscape, and finding sources that root you in tradition while facing the future, honestly, is, well, it's rare.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today. From the quiet, crushing exhaustion of leadership to the loud, hollow distractions of TikTok algorithms and AI-generated speeches.
We really have.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with something to examine in your own life. Because you don't have to wear a clerical collar to fall into these traps.
Right.
In a world where artificial intelligence can flawlessly write our emails and our speeches, and social media can mathematically manufacture our popularity, what is the one irreplaceable, authentically human element that you bring to your daily life that a machine never could?